The hidden dangers of moderate drinking. I remember when I was drinking that people told me, hey, if you have a glass of wine a day, that's actually good for your health. And a little bit of liquor goes a long way when it comes to health things. But what I found out was actually the exact opposite. And today we're going to talk about one of the hidden dangers that nobody talks about when it comes to moderate drinking. And whether you're drinking moderately, which is a couple a day or a couple a week, this is important for you because this is something the big alcohol companies don't like to talk about. Me and Terry have gone through the ringer learning exactly what the harmful nature is of moderate drinking to some people that could be detrimental. And that's what we're talking about today. So, Terry, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, and I do not drink moderately. I don't drink at all.
All
If I
right.
was to have a drink, I would definitely not be a moderate drinker. So,
Yeah.
there's a difference here between moderating your drinking and drinking moderately. And you know what it is? See, for me, I tried to moderate my drinking often, all the time when I was drinking. And that was, for me, that was like, oh yeah, I think I wouldn't actually think of a number, but I'm going to drink less today. And that would end up being, 6, 7, or 8 drinks. But, the CDC actually defines moderate drinking as 1 drink per person on average, for a woman on average per day, and 1 to 2 for a man on average per day. That's what moderate drinking is. Have I ever been able to drink 1 or 2? I don't think so. I was never able to average that, at least. And maybe some of you can, but I'll bet if you're here, you have trouble doing that. So we're going to talk more about that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because when we talk about moderate drinking, there is the illusion that, oh, hey, you're an alcoholic when you completely cross over and you get into regular drinking and you can't moderate. Now, before I became an alcoholic, I was able to moderate. I was able to have, a couple a day, go without it for a week. It didn't really bother me all that much. And I think that is the danger point that a lot of people are in. A lot of people might be alcoholics and don't know it yet. Now, for me, I had to go down the big, slippery slope of mental institution, almost losing my life, all kinds of things and all kinds of craziness to quit drinking because I didn't understand the stuff that we're talking about here. Now, it's important to note that Terry and I are not doctors. We're not trained addiction counselors. We've never had any letters after our name. And we need to understand that there are certain things that go on in an alcoholic's life that only the alcoholic really understands. And hopefully you don't get to that point where you do understand because it's pretty difficult. And what I found was that my moderate drinking, when I was able to drink moderately, I would read the studies. I'd be like, oh, hey, you know what? This news report says that wine is good. And then at the bottom of the report, I would ignore the fact that it was, sponsored by the alcohol companies and everything like that. And what I didn't realize is that being an alcoholic was something that was in me from the beginning, but something that needed to be awakened by drinking, right? And we look at it, and alcohol causes the alcoholism. So I might have been predisposed to drinking, but then the alcohol took over, and that's when chemical dependency happened. And what we want to look at here is the fact that both Terry and I, and probably a lot of people listening in, had struggled with moderate drinking. Like, oh, I got drunk too much and I didn't like it, or I'm drinking too much and I don't know how to stop, or whatever it is. And that is the danger point, even though you don't know it. Right? For me, I had no idea I was there. I had no idea that 6 months, a year later, I would be in the grips of chemical dependency. And that's something that not a lot of people talk about.
Yeah, totally. I remember trying to moderate and just, I'm going to have 1 or I'm going to have 2, something like that when I go to the bar with some friends. I could switch to soda or something like that. That's what I do. But, one of the craziest things that I would keep drinking, but I would have that 1 or 2, and then that thought process would start. I would want more. it would just completely dominate me. I would just constantly think about, I want another one. I want another one. And, usually I caved and had more, but sometimes I didn't. And it just took over my personality. I always wanted more. That's the way it was. And, for an alcoholic to drink moderately, at least for me, it's just not possible. It's even if I don't take that drink, I'm still going to have that alcoholic thought process. And that's what we're trying to do here is change our thinking into that sober mindset where we're not thinking about that. And for me, alcohol has to come off of the table completely. There's just no way I can drink moderately. And I don't know any alcoholics that can. I've seen some try, and it usually comes back to bite them. At
Exactly.
least every time I've seen it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I remember years ago, someone had told me, it's that point where you say, I need a drink, that makes the problem. And I remember listening to that, and I'm like, well, I don't really need it, even though I did. What you do is you hear a lot of little crutch words and a lot of cliches that keep us stuck, right? And what we have to do is we have to look at the facts. I mean, what are the facts? All right, well, according to the CDC, Terry said, 1 to 2 drinks per day makes you an alcoholic, which is like, okay, well then I was an alcoholic long before I ever admitted or even thought I had a problem, because 1 to 2, that was a normal day. I mean, we've had presidents that drink more than that as a regular part of the routine. And you start to look at that and you understand, okay, wait a minute. So let's forget about the numbers. Because to you, maybe 2 is full-blown alcoholic. To someone else, maybe it's not. But we need to define alcoholism as the inability to quit. That's what it is. All right, so whether you're having 1 a week, if you're like, okay, no, I'm not going to give that 1 up a week, even though the doctor said I should, or even though this, or even though that, or even though once a week I'm getting completely hammered and I don't like it, we need to understand that that is the definition of an alcoholic. Continuing to drink even though there's negative consequences. And one negative consequence, I mean, you look at it and you're like, okay, what is it? Is it a DUI? Is it a health thing? Is it a failed marriage? Well, yeah. But it's also you want to quit and you can't. That is a negative consequence, right? Obviously, It's producing negative results if you want to quit. Maybe productivity, maybe your thought process. Maybe it leads you to depression or sad thoughts, or it's affecting your mood. And we start to understand, wait a minute, the hidden danger of alcohol has always been and will always be chemical dependency. That is something that every drinker needs to keep in mind. Because even if you're not an addictive personality, even if you don't have alcoholism in your family, you can be susceptible because alcohol creates alcohol dependency. Just like drugs. You go to the doctor, you get a drug, you become an addict, and now you're dependent. That didn't exist before the drug. And maybe you took it the way it was prescribed in the beginning, and you were doing okay, but now you've crossed that threshold, and that's the danger zone that can be detrimental to your life, detrimental to your business, your family, legally. I mean, you start to look at it, and the line isn't that big. The crossover line for me, I never knew when I crossed it over. I still, to this day, couldn't tell you the day I became chemically dependent.
Right.
And that's scary because what if it was before I thought it was? What if it's before you think it's going to be? What if you're already there? Right? And one of the best things to look at is try to quit. That'll tell you real quick if you got a chemical dependency problem. Now, you might be able to go 3 weeks or a month like I did, but eventually I came back and I had to drink. And for those 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I was sitting around wondering why I couldn't drink. I was productive. I felt great. I was happy. I made resolutions, but I never actually got better because chemical dependency was always affecting my life.
And you might even be able to go years. I know a person that went for years without drinking, and she had said that she was an alcoholic, and she quit for, I don't know, 10 years, something like that. And then she stopped. She stopped for 11 years. But she said during that 11 years, she thought about it constantly. So that's something you really have to, if you do quit and you're trying to, really figure out, am I really an alcoholic? I think we all have those thoughts. And she had those thoughts, but she was constantly thinking about that drink, constantly. And eventually she caved and went back to drinking. But she's been sober now for almost 2 decades. But that's the thing with this, is we don't know where that line is. Like Marcus said, he didn't know where his line crossing over was. Me neither. I mean, when I was in college, 6 beers a day, that was pretty common. Was I an alcoholic then? I don't know. I didn't really try to quit. I was able to get through school. I was doing all right. I had a job. Life was going okay. And when I got out of college and moved and started my real life, I guess, I didn't drink as much. Did I stop? No, not at all. I drank more in moderation for a long time, and then it slowly built up again. Where's that line for me? Was it when I was a teenager? I don't know. Who knows? Doesn't matter. Right now what matters is that I don't take that drink, because I can't drink in moderation. And Paul, I agree with you. I think this should be taught as a mandatory course at school, or at least something. They should give some addiction teachings in school. I think would be a good idea. But and Grimm was mentioning. He mentioned that he was trying to justify his heavy drinking. See, everyone else is drinking that much. You're fine. Oh yeah, I use that one all the time. Everybody, but what I didn't realize or admit to was I was drinking before and after they were. So I don't know. Was I really drinking the same as them? I don't think so.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to look at, because chemical dependency is a slippery slope, and it is dangerous, and we have to understand exactly what's going on, and we have to be vigilant about where we're at with our drinking. And if you are out there and you're moderately drinking and you think everything's okay, take a look, take an inventory every so often and see how you're doing. Hey, am I crossing over? Do I like this? Am I getting drunk more than I'd like to? Is this creating negative consequences in my life? How's my health? Different things like that, because I think it's very, very important. Scott says, I want to know how to stop thinking about drinking all the time. Well, what we need to remember is that the brain is a muscle. I think it's a muscle. I don't know. I didn't go to doctor school, but I think it's it's like a muscle. And it can be worked out and trained. And what we want to do is we want to train our brain to not think about it. Because what happened was, through years of chemical dependency, dependent means you're dependent on something. It's much like, maybe you get caught up in a religious group and all of a sudden you're thinking about religious stuff, or you meet a new girl or guy and all of a sudden you're thinking about this person all the time. And it's because it's doing something for you, and it's something that you have put in your brain. It's kind of like what you put in is what you get out, right? And this is a very interesting thing, because one of the things that I've done in sobriety is I've studied the history of language. It's always fascinating. Where did language come about? Why did we sit around and say, well, that's a tree? And, what was it like before we called that a tree? Like, did we even remember things if we didn't have language to categorize it in a very simple way? Well, how does that relate to thinking about drinking? The way it relates is by understanding that these words are not words that you made up. These are words that society made up. Alcohol isn't something that you made up or came up with. The drink isn't something that you started off thinking about all the time. When you were a kid, all you thought about is, when am I going to eat, and I hope I don't fall. That's about it. Over time, you said, well, now I'm thinking about, fun cars, because that's what people think about in my age group. And now I'm thinking about people I'm attracted to. Now I'm thinking about this. And we start to understand that, wait a minute, does it matter that you're thinking about drinking all the time? I don't care what you think about all the time. As long as I don't drink, doesn't really matter what I think about. Now, that's the first caveat. Because if you drink, then you don't have any choice of what you think about. Don't believe me? Go try it. Right? I never had a choice. I would go into that dark place every time I drank. And so what I needed to understand was that, first of all, thinking about drinking all day, it's normal. You drink for a while, you became an alcoholic, which is why you're here. You're going to think about drinking. That's normal. Second is to realize that the minute you take the sting away, and the sting is, I don't care. I used to think about it. I remember I was sitting in church in my early 20s, and the pastor was a lunatic, and he said, your thoughts are things, and we're wrestling against bad thoughts and good thoughts. And I'm like, yeah, that's a great thing to say to a congregation that's probably half full or more of people with OCD. Good job, lunatic, right? And he said this, and what it does is it makes you think that your thoughts are a big battle and a war and a... No. Thoughts are chemical impulses in the brain. I don't care what those law of attraction people say. I don't care about this, that, or the other. Thoughts are chemical impulses. To think otherwise is to be completely narcissistic. To think that your thoughts have some bearing on something other than you is completely narcissistic. And I used to think this way. So preaching to the choir here, I needed to learn this lesson the hard way. And so once you take the sting away, you say, these are just chemical impulses. Obviously, I'm going to think about drinking because that's all I did for the last 5 years. It's normal. All right, so now when those thoughts come in, you don't care anymore. It doesn't matter. Right? And I remember when I got back from listening to that pastor, I would sit around, be like, oh, my bad thoughts are everywhere. It really is a war. Oh, man, look, the devil's in my head. There wasn't no devil in my head. It was because I watched too much crime TV and went to church and they said that was bad. Right? Well, you don't believe me? Go watch TV. Like, you got people in the world that all they do is talk about reality TV. And I'm like, okay, that's a mental problem. But at any rate, I digress. But that's what's on their mind because they're putting it in. Chemical impulses. That's all it is. Chemical impulses. Big deal.
Yep. That's exactly what I do. Scott, I have to tell you that I kind of think that way. I have those thoughts, definitely. I don't think about drinking all the time. I notice it, absolutely. Go to a restaurant, and nowadays they've got the fanciest cocktails around. They have like layers with blues and oranges and greens and reds, and it's like this beautiful cocktail, and I look at that and go, man, that looks delicious. I think about it. But at the same time, it's off the table. I will not have alcohol. It's off the table for me. I don't put a lot of credence into that. I see that there's alcohol. I see it that I'm thinking about it, and I can almost taste the refreshing taste of that drink. Absolutely. But I don't put any meaning on that. I let it go. It's okay. There's lots of stuff without alcohol that I can have. I can also eat good foods. There's lots that I can do. I focus on the other things. Ben had said try a new hobby or exercise, stuff like that. Something that's different. That's the next step. The first thing you have to do is get over worrying about the fact that you think about alcohol. Scott, if you're fairly new in sobriety, even if you're less than a couple years sober, the cravings and the thoughts of the alcohol, they can go on for a long, long time. And in fact, one of the authors of Alcoholics Anonymous, he had cravings for 2 years, and he didn't just snap out of it. He had those cravings. He was fighting them. He had to learn to start to think differently, and that's what I've done as well. Is I don't put much thought into the fact that I'm going to have the craving here and there. It happens. I hear people with 25 years of sobriety, and they're like, yeah, I can't believe it. I thought about drinking the other day. It happens here and there, and it's just part of my thought process. But as Marcus said, it's just a chemical impulse. I don't have to act on it. No big deal. And that's kind of the way I go through it. Is I just don't worry about it. And what Ben had said, trying to find something else. That's it. That's huge. Having other hobbies or whatever you're going to do, and And for me now, it's taking care of this dang property. And yesterday we got to avoid a moose on our dog walk, so things like that stress me out now.
You know what'll be stressful? Trying to figure out the plural version of moose. Is it moose or meese? I don't know. But Neil says alcohol and alcoholism is just part of your health style and your sugar addiction. Neil, I'm going to disagree with you on that. Does it have to do with sugar addiction? It can. But sugar addiction and alcohol addiction is vastly different.
Yeah.
It is not the same thing. You never get a DUI with sugar, right? Unless you probably have other problems if you're getting that. And that's because under the influence of sugar is a different type of thing. Also, to say that alcohol and alcoholism is part of a health style, now that's a lack of a health style. And so we have to understand that, okay, a lot of people are going to pigeonhole stuff. Oh, alcoholism is really dehydration. Oh, it's really sugar addiction. And no, it's not. It's alcoholism. You're an alcoholic. And once we first start to realize that, now, can it be tied to sugar? Of course. Can it be tied to dehydration? Yeah, it basically robs all the vitamins of your body. But at the end of the day, you are not chemically dependent on sugar. You're chemically dependent on alcohol. That's a huge difference from sugar addiction. All right, now, do alcoholics crave candy when they're out? Yeah, and I'll tell you why. They crave candy because the candy industry lies to us and tells us that it actually tastes better than fruit. It doesn't. Trust me, go get fruit, eat it every night instead of candy. You're going to feel better. You're going to love it. I do it every night. I felt great. And right out of rehab, I used to eat candy all the time. And I'm like, wait a minute. Thought there was nothing like this. Basically, candy is like they go and get all the stuff that is in fruit, take all the good stuff out of it, manipulate the taste of it, throw a bunch of sugar, and charge $4 for a bunch of crap. That's all it is. And once we understand that, we start to understand, okay, I need to separate this. Alcoholism is alcoholism is alcoholism. Plain and simple. Chemical dependency is chemically dependent. Alcohol is a chemical. Might turn into sugar in your body, but it's a chemical. Okay, and once we understand that, we're like, okay, I need to separate and isolate. And I think it's dangerous to go into all these other aspects of things. Because, Terry and I talk about it all the time. I went to therapy when I was an alcoholic because I thought my problem was therapy stuff, past stuff, trauma, not alcohol. This was big because it kept me stuck and it kept me drunk and it almost ended my life. Had someone come along and said, buddy, do I think you need therapy? Yeah. But you're an alcoholic and you need help with alcoholism. Plain and simple.
Yeah, that's for me too. I totally had to separate the two. Absolutely, I love sugar, and I still fight with trying to limit the amount of sugar I intake, and that's one reason why it's really important to go to a doctor when you're stopping drinking, because there could be other medical issues like pre-diabetic or diabetic, and there's some people that really do have to stop their sugar intake, but it's separate. For me, and for many alcoholics, actually, before I go on, Marcus is going to put up a little video I did, and it does talk about food and how food can take a pretty big role in your sobriety and staying sober. And for me, what happened with me when I got sober was this alcohol was taken away. So that was a couple thousand calories taken out of my diet, and the cravings are really bad. And one tool a person can use if it's healthy, if it's not bad for you, the doctor says, okay, go ahead, is have that little sweet treat here and there. And for us in rehab, they said drink more fruit juice. And that's loaded. Those fruit juices, they're loaded with sugar, but that kind of took a little bit of that edge off, and that's one of the tools you can use. Now, what I did as I went through sobriety, and I've gone through sobriety, is I started to limit that stuff after I started to have control of my cravings and my drinking. I took care of sobriety first. I still take care of sobriety first. And then I try to, not eat too much sugar, have an apple instead of a cookie. It's not easy. I definitely don't pass that test every time, but I can try to start to eat healthier and start to lose some of that weight and get a little bit healthier. And when going back to the moderating alcohol use or drinking moderately, that's that 1 to 2 drinks is moderate drinking. Even that can have health effects on you. I mean, they've shown that it increases risks of certain cancers and other diseases. And there you also see other studies that say that 1 glass of wine is good for you. It could be there. It's really, that argument is still out there. There isn't a definitive answer from all the experts, And for me, I don't. In my sobriety, I try not to take chances. I don't want to walk on that tightrope of, is this going to make me start drinking, or am I going to be okay? I don't want to walk on that tightrope. I choose to be on the safer side of things. So the moderate drinking, even if one person says, yeah, that's good for you, 1 glass of wine is good a day, or it can be bad for you, you can cause cancer, whatever. I hear both sides. I'm going to lean towards that. I'm going to go on the safe side of things. That's what I have to do in my sobriety, is stay on the safe side of things. I mean, it's as simple as, I'm not going to go to the bar because all my friends are there drinking, rather than, I can go because it's all my friends and I'll just drink soda. Yeah. I'm going to stay away from that situation. I'm going to stay on the safer side of things. And I'll see my friends out on the trails or out for a cup of coffee in the morning, something like that instead.
Absolutely. And it is I've been sober 8.5 years now, or 8 years and a little bit. And the other day we went to a Thai restaurant and I got a Thai iced coffee to go.
Oh, yeah.
And so good. I sipped it and I was like, this tastes like alcohol. Because there was something very distinctive they put in it. So I went back in there, even though my brain is like, yeah, they're not going to serve you alcohol in a to-go cup and, send you on. It's not Wyoming. Wyoming, they literally have drive-through liquor stores. I was like, are you kidding me? Oh, gee, I don't wonder why there's so much drunk driving around here. Because you're literally letting people drive drunk. Literally. Like, that's why. But at any rate,
they'll deliver it to our house here.
Well, that's fine. You're in your house. Like a drive-through liquor store is a totally different
good point.
Animal. But I was worried. I was like, okay, I don't want this if it has. So I went in and I asked the lady, does it have alcohol? And she's like, no. And I chose not to drink all of it because I was like, okay, it's a little bit too familiar for me. And I'd play on the safe side. And so I start to realize that, there's several things in sobriety that we need to guard and understand. And we need to take care of. One of the things is, I remember in rehab, our counselor used to always say, everyone knows what to do with your dog. You know what you should do with your dog? You know what you need to do with your dog? Everyone comes over, tells you how to run your dog. Everyone's going to come over and tell you what you need to do with your alcoholism. But at the end of the day, you got to listen to people who've been there, done that, and you need to listen to your doctor. Plain and simple. 2 things. I remember I went to the doctor a couple years ago. Cholesterol was through the roof. Probably a little bit diet, but mostly hereditary. He said, you need to take this, and you need to eat an apple every day. I'm like, okay. Every day, with the exception about 3 where I was on the road, I've had my apple every day. I drink my smoothie every morning. And what you're going to learn is that even though alcoholism is not about willpower, because you gave up your willpower the minute you became an alcoholic, we started to look at that and say, okay, well, that doesn't mean that being a recovered alcoholic strengthens my willpower, because it does do that. And I've noticed that I've gotten a lot stronger with things, and I've been able to to really exercise that, which has been good.
Yeah. NZ News says I'm not an alcoholic, I'm an addict. Yeah, I hear you, man. I'm can definitely go down that addiction path with many things that aren't necessarily considered an addictive thing. But alcohol, I can't drink, that's for sure. I know I won't stop with that. I can get to the point where maybe, like in the past, I've done too much exercise, but I keep going even though I'm starting to get injured.
Yeah.
But I'm able to control that. Alcohol, no, I can't control that. Once I start, I'm not going to be able to stop. Where the exercise, I was, and I am able to control that.
Yeah. Well, and it's like when I moved here to Florida, I started getting really bad allergies, and they gave me some allergy medicine, which it wasn't allergy medicine; it was asthma medicine, which is steroid based. And I would take it, and I'd be up till 3 a.m. like, yeah, man, let's get some work done. I like this. And then like 3 days later, I'm like, I kind of feel like I'm on something I shouldn't be on. So I went to the doctor and I told him, and that was, how I look at it. It's chemical dependency. I could have gotten there real quick. Had I not caught it and just said, well, hey, I like this, and, I got to take it. Had I not caught it, I probably would have had a rough time getting off that stuff.
Yep. Hey, the tax man, you said you need some help getting off the sauce, but you don't want a seizure. Absolutely, dude. I did have a seizure, and it almost killed me when I stopped. I had stopped drinking for approximately 18 hours at that point, and went to the hospital and had grand mal seizures for a couple of weeks. When they tried to take me off the medicine after that, but yeah, you need to go to a doctor if you're concerned about it. I mean, any of you, if you're trying to quit, go to the doctor. And a lot of the biggest excuse I hear, that's the one I hear is I don't have insurance and I can't afford it. Well, how much have you spent on alcohol? And the doctor visit usually isn't that much, so it's a couple hundred bucks, but I spent that in a week on alcohol. So that's the excuse I hear. The excuse I don't hear, which was my main excuse, was I don't want to admit to somebody else that I'm an alcoholic and I'm afraid to quit. But at the same time, I wanted to quit. It's like I didn't want to make that commitment to stop. That was the hard part. Is what I know I won't be able to drink again if I stop now and I admit it to everybody. Everybody's going to call me out on it if I start, so that kind of takes that off. But that's what I had to do. So it's a big step, man. But you can do it. Go to a doctor.
Yep. Neil says, thanks for the feedback and sugar discussion. Thanks for listening. At the end of the day, these are our opinions. I'm pretty strong about it because I did go through the ringer. And I had a lot of misinformation. I had someone sit there blatantly, when I know for a fact I was an alcoholic, and say, you're not an alcoholic, you have alcohol misuse. And that was like a free pass to keep drinking. And that was bad advice. I had another guy, I walked into, someone said, oh, you need to go to a psychiatrist. And I go in and he's like, give me 300 cash. And I'm like, for what? He's like, you give me 300 cash, whether you like my answer or not, you pay it. And I'm like, but like, I've never had a doctor say this before. And I think he was one of them doctors that's like, yeah, give me 300 and I'll give my little pad to give you whatever you want. And he's like, well, take it or leave it. And I said, I'm going to leave it. And I went to the bar. Which, I don't know, probably better off going to the bar at that point. But at any rate, I had to look at it and I had to go to serious people to get serious answers. And one of the serious people will be a doctor that's not in it just for cash, which, I mean, most aren't. This was like, there were signs that the guy was a little iffy, but I ignored him because I wanted an iffy guy because I was an alcoholic and I didn't want someone to say I was an alcoholic. And they weren't, my doctor wasn't judgmental or anything. They helped me. And the rehab was great. I actually had a good time. I got a lot out of it. And good time, not like, yay, great time. It was it's a good time of learning about chemical dependency, learning about alcoholism, and that was important, you know. And I think that we have to understand that at the end of the day, it's up to us to figure out what we're going to do. And if you have a problem with alcohol, like the tax man or anyone else here that's struggling, get help. I couldn't do it alone. Yeah. I wish I could. I wish I was strong, Mr., willpower, king of the road. But I wasn't. I was king of the drunk. And I was sitting there being drunk all the time, and I couldn't do anything about it. And I had to get help.
And so did I. Absolutely. Yeah, NZ News was saying dependent on it, no doubt. I went to the doctor, but the doctor wouldn't give me the drugs. He said I need to go to this course, and I didn't want to bother with them. Yeah, it's hard, and for me, just like Marcus had just mentioned, I had to take responsibility for my own sobriety. But part of my taking the responsibility was when I finally did get sober, because before when I tried to get sober, I wanted to do it my way, and it didn't work. When I finally wanted to get sober, I started to do it the way that no matter who it was, if they were, as long as they were a doctor or another sober alcoholic, an addiction specialist, somebody that knew what they were talking about, I was going to try whatever people told me to try. Now, did I do all those things, and did I stick with them? I did try everything that people told me to try. Did I stick with all of those things? No. But I did find what seemed to work for me, and that's how I was able to stay sober, was staying open-minded for what people were suggesting that I do. We have a course here. I suggest that you guys try it. And I think it's a good course, and it will help you get that sober mindset. But I just really, the biggest thing for me in getting and staying sober was having that open mind and not just be willing to try these things, but actually going out and trying them. When I was drinking, I did not try stuff. Oh, I was willing to do everything. I was willing to do this to get rich, and this to quit drinking, and this and that, and I was always willing to do stuff. But did I ever do it? No. So I had to open up that mind, and then I had to get to work. Because I'm responsible for my sobriety. No one else is. Other people want me to get sober, but it's me. I have to do it.
And I think one of the important things, like we talk a lot about chemical dependency, at the end of the day, chemical dependency in a physical, go to the doctor kind of way is absolutely true. Okay? But in the mental way in your head, it's not true. Let me explain. Chemical dependency is an absolute pain in the butt. It's real. It causes a lot of people to not be here anymore. Causes a lot of people to drink and not stop. And that should be treated, and you should go to the doctor for it, hospital, whatever. Very important. But the flip side, when I was chemically dependent, my brain told me I needed alcohol to live. That part is a brain tweak. Because of the fact that it told me I needed alcohol to live weeks after I had quit. Or tried to quit. So, what we need to realize is that eventually you don't need alcohol to live. Eventually you're going to be okay. But I didn't believe this. Had Terry come to me when I was drinking and said, hey buddy, if you quit, life is going to be better mentally, physically. You're not going to crave it like you do right now. I would have said, get out of here. You don't know what you're talking about, Terry. You're full of it. I need this to live. See me over there trying to get the little bottles and pour enough to have a drink, shaking? You don't know what you're talking about, Terry. But Terry, if he said that back then, he would have known what he was talking about. Because I've been through it. And I know that now I don't need to drink. I don't even want to drink. And I start to understand, wait a minute. Although in the midst of chemical dependency for the first week, yes, we're susceptible. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, go to the doctor. Once it's out of your system, It's all a lie in your brain saying you need this. You don't need it. You don't have to live this way anymore. What you're using to feel good isn't even feeling good. Like, I remember back then I was like, oh man, this is a great day. And now I'm like, man, those days were crap compared to an actual good day where I'm not hungover or drunk or whatever. And when we start to understand that alcohol has been lying to us and addiction has been lying to us, we go get help and we figure out there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Now, NZ News and Taxman kind of mentioned some of the tough times they had with the doctor and a rehab, respectively. And yeah, well, people are human. That's the first thing. So people aren't perfect, absolutely. Even doctors, even the people in rehab. And then you, for rehab, for instance, pretty much everybody there they're sick. So yeah, people are going to be judgmental and stuff like that. That's going to happen. That was the same. Marcus and I were at the same rehab, and yeah, there were some sick puppies there. And I just had to learn to stay away from them or ignore them. And that's just kind of what I did. Because once again, I'm responsible for my own sobriety. I was there for a reason. Marcus was he was the same way, there for a reason, and so he focused on that. I didn't quite focus as much as he did, and that's maybe why I started drinking when I got out of it. But I was there for a reason, so I did try to focus on that. And I just, that's life. That's one thing rehab does, is it kind of gives us a view of life, and that we have to deal with it. There's people that aren't right in the head, or that may steer us in the wrong direction all around. Definitely on the internet, that's for sure. And I just try to stay away from it and do the best I can. That's why I try to stay open-minded and learn that I can turn a different direction immediately. Don't have to stick with something that's not working.
Absolutely. Neil says, when does alcohol dependent become not being dependent? Interesting question. I'm going to, again, state that I'm not a doctor. From my limited understanding, I think alcohol completely leaves your system after about 7 to 14 days, which in that case, it's a mental dependency. The physical stuff should be gone, and it's all mental at that point, I think. Didn't go to any doctor school, but that's what I understand. And one of the benefits that I had out of rehab was the first year sober, I really didn't work much at all. And all I did was study alcohol. It's all I did. I read everything I could, learned about thought processes, everything. I was obsessed. And I think that helped me really understand what was going on and get a footing of, hey, this is what I need to do. And that's why I like sharing it with other people too. Because there is a lot of misinformation. There is a lot of dangers out there, and at the end of the day, you are responsible for it. Like, if I have something wrong with me health-wise, I could sit and ignore it. Probably won't last very long, but, same with alcoholism. You could sit and ignore it, or just keep going along. But at the end of the day, I had to realize there's a better life around the corner. I don't have to feel this way anymore, and I don't need to drink anymore. And those were the things that really kept me through, is understanding this is not true. It's a lie. You go to the doctor, you get helped. Pretty soon you're not going to be chemically dependent. And the only way I know that that's not going to be activated again is by not drinking. I had a hint, 5 years sober, took those medicines for my allergy. I liked it. I was like, yeah, I better stay away from these.
Yeah.
So
I hear you. I've had that experience as well. Something that we can watch out for it.
Absolutely.
And just stay objective with it.
All right, guys. I think that's about all for today. Make sure you check out talksober.com. Get signed up. It really helps us out with what we're doing on the channel here. It also gives you lots of tools and tips and audios, MP3s, videos, PDFs to help you get and stay sober. All about the mindset stuff. It is not a replacement for going to the doctor or rehab. But it will help you with the mindset stuff, and it does help what we're doing here on the channel. And it's only $27 a month, which is less than the price of like a domestic beer a day, which isn't even that good. So if you want to help out, you can check that out. Really cool stuff. So thanks for being here. Make sure you subscribe, smash that like button. Check out talksober.com. There's free resources if you want free resources. And then there's also other stuff as well. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.